Welcome to Eden Church. I want to look at a guy I've never preached on before. It's Noah. It's Noah. Now, when it comes to Noah, the praise given to him in the Old Testament is completely unrivaled. No one gets close to the statements about Noah. And it says this in 6:9. It says, Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And kudos to him. I mean, for goodness sake, God saw something in Noah, this faithful, blameless man, that he continued the human race kind of thing, right? So thank you, Noah. We respect you. We honor you. That's amazing. You are the reason that we're here in many, many ways. So God chose him to restart the plan. And yet Noah, for me, is a great representation, of the Western Church's idea of individualism. He really is. You see, where we maybe go about our spiritual life and we try not to muddy, maybe subconsciously, our worlds, our personal faith, our private world with our public world. Actually, I think Noah tends to do the same thing. You see, when Noah, and he's in this dire age where corruption and violence are just all over the place, so much so that actually in verse 6 of chapter 6, it says this, and the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth. I mean, how bad do things have to be when he says that? Now, through the Supernatural World series, you will understand there's some connotations there between the rebellious sons of God and their offspring, and combining with women, human women, and creating offspring, and it was all a bit awkward. Watch the Supernatural World series if you haven't. We're not going to get into that right now. But God says of Noah, in this dire world, he says this statement in 7:1. He says, "You alone have I found righteous in this whole generation." Now, this is an incredibly telling statement. This is an incredibly impactful statement because it's telling us this, that Noah, even though he was righteous, even though he had moral responsibility and personal responsibility, even though he was close to Father to a degree, even though he lived a good life, he had no impact on the environment and the people around him. You alone. So it didn't matter how great his personal life was, he made no impact in the world around him. There's no indication he even tried, which is interesting. I think his blamelessness came from his requirement, his individualism to keep his environment safe and closed. Let's keep me and my family away from this terror. You can understand that, right? You can understand the temptation. But it's very similar to the religious leaders. The world around you is completely crumbling. I'm going to let it crumble because blameless, righteous, is important to me. But we know that God's command was different to that. Genesis 1:28. The second time he even mentions it, God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it." That's the commandment. That's what actually Noah was meant to have signed up to. And so why do you think, which is interesting to me, as the flood is done with and they restart, God recommissions Noah and his family with exactly this mandate all over again. 9:1. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Because that plan's never changed. We've unpacked this, we will do it again. It's incredibly telling to me that Noah saved his family, himself, and animals. But at what expense? Everyone else perished. There's no impact in the world. Now, reading up on this, and Jonathan Sachs is just an amazing guy who passed away now, but he's really helpful with all this. And he alluded to some scholars, and the scholars, Jewish scholars, refer to Noah as a righteous man in a fur coat. That's really interesting. What on earth is that about? And what they mean is there's two ways to keep warm. One, you put a coat on, or two, you light a fire. And their argument is this, that actually Noah put a coat on when he was meant to light a fire. Because when you light a fire, you keep other people warm. When you wear a coat, you keep yourself warm. And I thought, wow, that's helpful. It's quite cold in here. I might put a coat on. Or should we put the heating on? Help all of us. It is on. I think Noah wore a coat that was supposed to light fire. And one of the reasons I believe that is because after the flood's done, the first thing he does is he plants a vineyard. And it's not like, oh, let's plant a vineyard. No, he plants a vineyard, and it's pretty clear, actually, he wants to drink. Right? So Noah's story gets pretty bad after this, and probably the less detail we go into this, the better. But let's just say he has a night of drinking, and he forgets to dress himself for bed. And then some really weird stuff going. Now, that is exactly what happens in psychology. Not that they get drunk and naked, but this mentality is clearly a survival guilt mentality. It's when something bad happens and you've survived and you don't know why, and you wish maybe I should have done something to prevent that situation, and so you punish yourself. Because you can't live with the guilt. You can't really say, why me? What's special about me? That person should have survived, I shouldn't. So it's just one of these situations that people experience in humanity. Just a thought. You see, where Adam and Eve failed to take personal responsibility, Cain failed to take moral responsibility. Actually, I want to argue this. I want to argue that Noah didn't take collective responsibility. He got saved, but at what expense? And as we start to wrap this up, I want to argue this, that ultimately bad things happen when good people do nothing. And when it comes to individualism, we've seen this. I can't remember what it's called, but you see this, and they've done experiments, and it all kicked off a number of years ago when someone was getting robbed in a really busy street, and everyone watched and no one helped. Because they all thought someone else would help. And literally no one did. And it shook the world. But that's individualism. That's what happens when we don't come together. Now, you might think I'm being harsh on Noah, but I think he exhibits what the church is, that we flee from responsibility, the flight of responsibility. And I know that because the church still has a thinking where it says, come to us. Come to us where we're in control. Maybe we'll go to you, but if we're going to go to you, it's because we're in control of it. We'll bless you, but on our terms. It's individualism, it's control, it's not helpful. Rabbi Sachs says one thing to note is that actually when God decrees and he says the world's going to perish, he says, notice what Noah says. Fascinating. Nothing. Noah has no response. Quietly gets on with it. Genesis 6:22. Noah did everything just as God commanded. Genesis 7:5, and Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. So sure, he's obedient, he's righteous, he's blameless. It's not enough. And yeah, personal moral responsibility, hold them in high esteem. Fantastic. We need that. But actually what we are lacking in our world, and what we are lacking as individuals, and what we are lacking as a collective, is taking collective responsibility. And if we want to see change, if we want church to change, that is one of the key things that has to take place. That we take responsibility, collective responsibility for those in our homes, for those in our streets, for those at our work. We'll talk about that a lot over the time, but it's collective responsibility is the thing that we need. To help us, we're going to read a bit more Bible, and I want to look at two key lives, one in the moment of Moses and one in the life of Abraham. I think we know where we're going, potentially. Genesis 18:16-25. When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just." We heard that last week. So that the Lord will bring about to Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." The men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained. standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him. He's approaching God, the creator of the universe, and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous people? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" Let's hold that thought. Exodus 32:94. "I have seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. "Lord," he said, "why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people." Wow. The Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Now, it's two incredible accounts. Firstly, we haven't got time to go into it, but God never intended to do anything. This is actually something else going on here, and God is letting them in to try and draw this leadership aspect out of them. He doesn't mean business. But they don't know this. So Moses and Abraham, in this moment, they could do a Noah. They could say, "Yes, whatever you say." But they don't. Not only have they shown personal responsibility and moral responsibility and just read their story, now they are doing something that Noah didn't do. They are showing collective responsibility. They are stepping up. They are being leaders, because leaders aren't born, they're made. And it comes to a point in a moment when you come up about something, you come against something, and you see something and you say, "Not on my watch." Even if it's apparently the God of the universe, you will stand in the gap and say, "God, enough's enough. Something has to give." But when we're so focused on us, and our world, and our comfort, it's just easier if we don't, right? As long as we're okay with God. I think individualism, and we'll see this next week, has in many ways killed the church. In many ways has derailed us from the church Jesus intended. And I guess there I want to say it's our opportunity now to pick up our anchor of individualism, put it back in the boat, and let the wind of the Spirit take us wherever He wants to take us. But that will be not just personal responsibility, not just moral responsibility, but collective responsibility. That actually, if we're going to become the Ekklesia that we are reading about in the Scriptures with fresh eyes, that we are seeing what happens, is that you can't separate this with that. But it's so easy, if we follow individualistic Western culture, to not make an impact in the world and to not muddy those worlds. But God is saying, hey, it's time to muddy those worlds. You either bring me with you or don't bother bringing me at all. Like, I'm not your comfort blanket. Right? Take the fur coat off, and would you like to flip in fire? So everyone gets warm. Don't hide yourself under a bushel. You're a city on a hill. And we're going to look at all that stuff in due course. So I want to ask you this, and I hope it's an uncomfortable question, because you can't preach this without being yourself, okay? So trust me, I've been looking at this for quite a while and going, okay, this has to reform how I do my life. So your neighbour comes round. You can't just be neighbours. You're there to disciple people. I actually don't think Christians can have friends. Because you're there to minister, you're there to disciple. Not that they're not your friends. You can't separate the two. This is not your, as Dave preached, it's not your life anymore. You don't get to separate church and state, however you want to put it. Your public life and private life, they are one. Hey, no one expects you, right, to live a flawless life. They just want you to be authentic. Paul Gibbs said it. He said, I can follow someone who's flawed, but I can't follow someone who's fake. Fake will not work in this world, but flawed's fine. So we just go around the room because we're all flawed and we can all pick out our little issues. Do you understand where I'm coming from this morning? I know it's a lot. So I just want to ask you these questions. Just soaking them. Where is individualism preventing you from being who God's called you to be? Where are you so self-involved that you're not letting God break into those around you? Where is God calling you to get dirty with the kingdom? Where can and do you need to start taking collective responsibility? Where are you shrinking back to protect yourself at the expense of the souls of others? Read that last one again. Where are you shrinking back to protect your righteousness at the expense of the souls around you? So you don't have a job. You have a call. You don't need to leave your job to become a minister, to lead a church. You already are. There you are. I'll close with this thought. I've heard sermons. We've all heard a lot of sermons, right? And there's this buzzword, it's less now, but it's still prevalent. Countercultural, be countercultural. We need to be countercultural. I don't think that's the answer, actually. I think being countercultural, again, creates this separation, this individualism. Actually, the difference, the fundamental gospel truth, I believe, isn't to be countercultural, it's to create culture. So you bring Christ into that world and you transform that culture. It's your job at work. The call of God in your life is to transform that culture. It's to create a different culture, a kingdom culture in your worlds, in your family, in your friends, whether they know Jesus or not. You don't get to take Jesus off, is what I'm getting at. And I know that can sound tense and that puts the pressure on us. And I don't want to put pressure on us. And I've got a talk coming up that's called Evangelism is Dirty Word. It doesn't help us when we say we need to evangelize. I'm an introvert, naturally. So you tell me to evangelize, I'm locking myself in the bedroom and I'm putting Netflix on. Right? And what I'm just trying to get across, this simplicity of the gospel is actually one life at a time, but you're not to hide. Actually, you can't hide. Personal and moral responsibility are not enough. We need to take collective responsibility. And for some of you, that's on a massive scale, with access to loads of money in your worlds. And for some of you, that's your immediate family, because that's your world, and you're looking after people, and you're doing all that stuff, and there's no time for anything else. Just create culture, bring the kingdom. It's not about you anymore.